Welcome, Rosemary. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you join me on this. Well, it's International Women's Day slash month. As we know, we should always be celebrating remarkable women and all women, right?
Absolutely.
So, as we jump right in, I really want to get you to introduce yourself, and because I think you're the only one that can really do it justice. So, Rosemary, why don't you tell us who you are?
Uh,
And what role you've played in really increasing and acknowledging Black History Month in Canada.
I guess this means it's the long answer. So basically, I'm just a regular person like anybody else who was living my life and going to school and having all those usual um, wonderful opportunities to grow up. But because I was born in Toronto and because I um, at the time didn't fully appreciate it, but I was certainly experiencing what it means to be the only person who looks like you. We were the only black family in our neighborhood. I was the only black kid at my school. I never had a black teacher until I was in grade 10. And
Wow.
he was not an incredibly encouraging, wonderful person. Um, and I just never saw myself represented. And in fact, the only time I saw black people was when we went to church on Sunday because we went to a black church. And why were there black churches? Because when black people arrived in large numbers into Canada, they were not welcomed in the regular establishments. So they formed their own churches and continued to hold those churches separate until this very day. So on Sunday, I would see black people, the whole rainbow of people who are of African origin and from different backgrounds, doing all the things that the grand narrative told us didn't happen, that we weren't even here. So I saw people who were responsible. I saw people who were articulate. I saw people who were handling the money. I saw people who could sing. I saw people who could organize. I saw people who could cook, and just regular people who were just showing up. But it was very helpful. And the other thing that was very helpful about that, and this is not because I'm trying to convert anybody to attend church at all, but for me, what I also had the opportunity to go around the province because my church was part of a connection. And that connection included churches from Windsor all the way to Collingwood and many cities in between. So I, with my own eyes, through my own lived experience, knew that there were people who looked like me that were all over this country, well, significantly Ontario at the time. And they were doing things and they built things and they contributed to the development of this country, which I did not get from my educational experience, nor did I get from the grand narrative. So time goes by and I finish school, get married, have kids, and realize that my kids in school are having some of the same experiences that I had. Again, being pretty much the only kids as well, the only black kids. And around the same time, I was appointed to the board of directors of the Ontario Black History Society after already being a volunteer with them. I went to a meeting early because I had to get home early because I was still nursing my third child, my baby, and I was put in as the president without a plan, without an agenda, and the office manager slash executive director also left at the same time. So there was no corporate memory. I certainly knew what happened outside of the organization. I had been already doing volunteer. I had already been doing Black history presentations in schools and community organizations, and had already been representing the organization um, on TV and radio. But I really didn't know some of the inner workings. And in that process, um, we almost didn't have Black History Month for that year. Um, and I can talk more about the beginnings of Black History Month, but because of that glitch, I had to scurry and pull in favors, got Black History Month secured with the City of Toronto, and then realized that I would never could never let this happen to anyone again. It was too important. So I sought Black History Month with the province of Ontario, which I got, and had also been working on having a national uh, commemoration of this event. No email then, no social media. Everything had to be done in person, snail mail, as we call it, or faxes. So I happened to be at an event where Jean Augustine was in attendance, and I had already reached out to many MPs and not heard back. I approached her directly and asked her if she would um, take this initiative to the House, and she hesitated. She went into another room with a lawyer who was also already controversial. He'd been involved in um, earlier on with Jamaican patties being allowed to call themselves patties.
So
Anyway, that
interesting, the controversy,
it
right?
was a
Yeah.
controversy because the Canadian government, the Department of Health, whomever, decided that a patty had to be 100% all beef or chicken or pork, but it had to be meat, and it had to be just meat, not in a flaky pastry. So he was successful in getting patty. We still call them patties.
Mm.
Um, you can still buy a patty, but it doesn't always mean it's a 100% all beef. Anyway, so they went into another room together, and when they came out, uh, Jean decided that she would support it, and she took it to the House. So that means that Black History Month was now a national phenomenon, not just municipal or and provincial. And I also had secured it with every province in the country. So in December 95, it passed. February 1996, I was the only person on stage addressing the nation with the Prime Minister of Canada, Jean Chrétien, and the Black Caucus at the time. And that was a moment of incredible hopefulness.
Absolutely. Trailblazer, I would
Well,
say.
yeah, but I think I really felt in that moment that with the pressure, um, the mild pressure of there being an official Black History Month at every level of government, that it would result in required Black history from kindergarten to grade 12. It's 30 years later, and that still has not happened. Um, Around the same time, I also started working on August 1st as Emancipation Day, and that took over 20 years for that to be successfully passed at the national level. Um, but it was both of these dates are important because Black History Month um, is code for saying there were Black people in this country from the beginning. And August 1st is Emancipation Day is code for, and there was slavery on the lands that we now call Canada that lasted for over 200 years and did not end until the British Imperial Act, which went into effect on these lands August 1st, 1834. Yeah, so those are two big things that I've done, but there are many, many others. But those are national in scope, and I feel really happy that they were done. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing too, as Canadians or as a country, we associate slavery perhaps more to our neighbors in the South. We associate, although over the last decade, I would say Black History Month has really taken prominence in many of our organizations and celebrations and recognition. But, this has you put this forward 30 years ago. And I wonder throughout these years, 30 years has gone by fast, but I'm sure there's many moments in those 30 years that you look back and say, why are there still gaps? Why are we still having the same conversations? And can you share a little bit of those types of conversations, perhaps, that you're having today that you may have had 30, 20, 10 years ago?
Well, you've kind of said it. I mean, um, when I speak to different ministers of education, and why are we, where is the required Black history curricula from K to 12? It is very frustrating that there is not one. While the province of Ontario is now working on a curricula for 7, 8, 9, grade 7, 8, and 9. Um, it's great, but it's egregious
Mm,
because as a Black child, you don't remember you're Black or notice you're Black or have questions about what Black people have done when you magically become, well, grade 7, so you're about, what, 12? You are having those questions very early on, and you are having those experiences of probably being excluded or wondering why you are not seeing people who look like you very early on. But it's also a disservice to people who are not Black because um, if our school system is established to be a safe place where we can talk about important matters that we will need to understand going forward, we are leaving all people who are not Black with those same questions and giving them more opportunity for the grand narrative, which contains grand stereotypes and prejudices, to take a greater foothold and be harder to erase.
mhm. And when you talk about those, I think there are systemic issues. They create barriers, and it starts at such a young age. You talk about people who are not Black that need to also be part of the conversation. And because we're having this conversation today, Rosemary, we're obviously, talking about Black History Month, but we're also dipping into International Women's Month or History Month. I mean, you basically can cover both with all of the work that you've done, and you're such a key, you're part of that history, that key part of our history. And we appreciate you so much for bringing so many of those issues forward and, being able to stay the course, being able to actually see change. What would you say, to a child right now or a young child or youth that is experiencing some of those barriers as a Black Canadian in the school system?
There's not one thing to say, but
Mm,
I think that trying to find out for themselves more about their own story, trying to reinforce that perhaps through what they find out from their families, if their families can share anything with them, read books, involve themselves in events that may arise, and stay hopeful.
yes, absolutely. Staying hopeful, especially during these times right now that are seeing us in unprecedented times. How are you doing during this time? And what is your hope for Canadians as they navigate some of these troubling rhetorics?
Well, I think it's important for us to remember that it isn't one orange haired man who is doing this, that there are many people who are supporting him. And we have to look at how it is that so many people can support these incredibly, and I'm not just talking about the economic issues, but I'm
Hmm.
talking cultural issues, how so many people can support that. And I think that really speaks to the need to double down and make sure that we're stronger in sharing those cultural um, and historic bits of information that help to keep more balance in society.
I mean, I think that's such a great advice, because we can definitely get rattled. And I know a lot of people are feeling very unnerved, and, it's very good advice to look at it from a bigger picture. So, what can organizations right now do to really encourage the the narrative that Black History Month is not just to be celebrated in one month, but to encourage year-round support from some of the narratives or activities that you see in the month of February?
Well, number one, the biggest one is to make sure the focus is on Black history in this country. Having been in hundreds of schools, it's rather painful to only see images of African Americans as if it's all the same. And if it was a sports team, we wouldn't be happy to put up American sports teams and overlook Canadian sports teams and consider it to be all the same. It's not the same. And it has the unintended, perhaps, consequence of making it seem as if there really was no Black history here. It's all American. So to make that focus Canadian, because there is a Canadian history, and um, I think I've lost track of the question, but I wanted to just somehow make reference of the fact that, oh, I know, the original founder of Black History Month in 1926 was an American, was Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And it moved from being Negro History Week to Black History Month. It had come into Canada with the sleeping car porters. It was celebrated with the on the advice of the sleeping car porters. The first celebration of February as Black History Month took place in the 1950s at the BME Church of Canada at 460 Shaw Street, under the auspices of the Canadian Negro Women's Association, which later became the Congress of Black Women. And the host for that event was Judge Stanley G. Grizel. So I mention that because it was a one-off and it took place within the Black community. Well, not a one-off, but under the radar. And when the Ontario Black History Society was able to bring it into the mainstream with the first ever proclamation of February as Black History Month with the City of Toronto, the I'm not sure how they conceived of it, but my understanding of how it was originally conceived of in 1926 is that it was a time to celebrate what you had been working on learning all year, learning and doing and seeing, so that February was the culmination of everything that you had been doing. It wasn't ever supposed to be the only time that you did anything. And um, March 1st, every year, I'm free. I have no commitments, but I'm still a Black woman. And I was still a Black child March 1st. And all of the other people of African origin are still Black on March 1st and the rest of the year, and still have questions about our history, still have things that we want to research, still have wonderful events we want to participate in. It doesn't end for us.
Never does. I love that. And so, what's your hope then for the future, for the country, and for Canadians? What's your hope?
So many, but
I know.
I, I, I think the whole part of the idea of Black History Month is to allow everybody to know more about people who are the most distinct if this is perceived to be a white society, then the group that is the most not white is the Black community. And I think, ideally, when you consider that there are Africans who've been identified as being on these lands since at least 1604, and we still have challenges. We have challenges related to um, our position in society, generational wealth, generational opportunities. Um, People who are just arriving are sharing in those same limitations. So, what is the common factor? The common factor is ongoing, um, the ongoing treatment, consideration, um, negative ideas about people of African origin. So, if we help to remove some of that, which we've been working on, the I hopefully then everybody should be able to flourish. And I'm not sure that we're there yet. Yes, there's some people who've managed no matter what, but most people should. When a when you can, I think one statistic that I remember is that a white person with grade 12 fares as well as a Black person with a university degree. Maybe we can change that up a bit so that a Black person with grade 12 can fare as well as a white person with grade 12, and a white person with a university degree fares as well as a Black person with a university degree. And there aren't the opportunity to overlook the credentials, to overlook the work experience of people, just that it all balances out a bit more.
That's a really insightful way to finish and close off our interview, Rosemary. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we hope to connect with you again very soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate being involved with Cuso in this way, and wish you well.
Thank you.